assistants at meetings. Cassie is here today, and I also want to thank her because she was my editor and statistician for this project and spent many hours tweaking things with me, and I think she knows this project as well as I do. In 2010, I joined the Gold Award Committee for our council. I am inspired by girls working towards and achieving their Gold Award. Their enthusiasm, unique ideas, and pride in their achievements gives me great satisfaction. Last year, we had girls who cleaned an entire cemetery's headstones and then taught others how to maintain it, organized the drama props and costumes for their school, and then created a database with pictures, descriptions, and locations so the school could loan those items out. Another one created a recipe book with recipes for food pantries with unusual items after being on a mission trip with her church and seeing how much food was wasted just because people didn't know how to use it. However, the one I am most proud of was an autistic wardie. At our first meeting, she kept her back to me and answered in monosyllables. Not only did she complete a meaningful project, but she completed her video interview, walked across stage to get her award, and then got back up on stage to take a picture with her fellow awardees. My research focused on Girl Scout awardees who earned their award between 1980 and 2004. This group was chosen because these are women who have finished their post-high school education and are in the workforce. The research involved identifying if Gold Award Girl Scouts reflected servant leadership characteristics later in life. I believe the strong foundation given by Girl Scouts lends itself to showing contemplation of servant leadership characteristics as an adult. Although there were some studies on youth leadership, there was very limited work on how activities as a youth impact future leadership style. Schallstein and Sharon Sharif did work on youth self-awareness and future leadership. Dworkin, Larson and Hansen, and Perks and Hahn researched youth activities affecting adult volunteering. Madhama and Lohman researched social capital's impact on youth leadership. But there was very limited information on scouting and leadership. Girl Scouting's model of leadership is called the Girl-Adult Partnership. This model requires adults to be facilitators, a role in which they relinquish control and decision-making to the girls. As you can see on the graph, as girls get older, the roles between the leader and the girls reverse, and girls drive the direction of the program. Rather than dictating behavior and activities, a Girl Scout leader helps girls become everything they wish to be. A young woman earning a Gold Award between 1980 and 2004 would have spent 70 hours on self-awareness, careers, leadership, and service. Then for the project itself, they had to do a proposal similar to a business plan, 50 hours of actual project work, and then a final report. These requirements, the age group schedules, and other constraints result in fewer than 6% of Girl Scouts earning the Gold Award. When identifying my servant leadership characteristics for this project, I started with the 10 characteristics as defined by Spears. Then I looked at Barbuto and Wheeler, who split Spears' 10 characteristics into 5 servant leadership characteristics and 4 characteristics not specific to leadership. I settled on Van Diederock and Neutron's 8 characteristics of a servant leader and based my definition on those characteristics. Here you see the 10 parts of the Girl Scout law aligned with those 8 characteristics. On September 16th, an email was sent to over 100 Girl Scout councils requesting assistance. On September 22nd, only 1 response had been received. I then incorporated social media. Facebook and LinkedIn Girl Scout related pages received requests to post a link to the survey and a short description of the project. The survey was available for responses from September 16th to October 10th, 2014. SurveyMonkey was used as a collection method due to the nationwide research and indirect methods of communication with participants. A potential limitation of the data collection is the identification of potential respondents. Many Girl Scout councils do not have current contact information for their gold awardees. Distribution of the social media requests were through Girl Scout sources. So many of the women who have seen the post are likely still involved in Girl Scouts. That may lend some bias to the results, as they are they're active volunteers with the organization, and Girl Scouts is still an important part of their life. When gathering my data, I used a mixed methods approach, which allowed for a statistical analysis of responses through a quantitative analysis, and expanded the feedback to include the participants' opinions of Scouting's impact in the formation of their leadership beliefs. There were 30 questions focused on the quantitative measures through a survey based on Van Dieterach and Nuchin to identify the attitudes of respondents toward servant leadership. A narrative question: how did Girl Scouts influence you as a youth? Was used for the qualitative portion of the research. Non-identifying demographic data was obtained: the year of the high school graduation, their current age, their years in the workforce, and their years of post-high school education. During initial analysis of the survey, it was identified the survey was viewed 550 times. There were 419 surveys completed. 84 surveys were from respondents outside the 1980 to 2004 identified pool. 39 surveys were not fully completed. And so those last two groups were not used for the research. That resulted in an analysis of 294 surveys. The majority of the respondents were between 36 and 40 years of age. They had been in the workforce between 16 and 20 years and had graduated from college or graduate school. The mean age was 37.42, and 25.9% were in the 36 to 40-year-old range. The mean time in the workforce was 18.41, and 27.9 were in the 16 to 20-year range. 45% had graduated from college, and an additional 44% had advanced degrees. Quantitative analysis of each category of servant leadership included Cronbach's alpha reliability analysis, mean composite scores, and a correlation matrix. The 30 servant leadership questions and the individual components of the servant leadership survey performed reliably. Respondents generally did not identify forgiveness as a characteristic, with a 2.381 mean response. Although courage had a 3.618 mean, this was the second lowest recognized characteristic. The rest of the 8 characteristics identified at over a 3.9 mean, showing a reflection of the servant leadership characteristics. This slide shows items identified during the coding process and the compilation into themes. The darkest greens are the items identified during coding. The medium are the level 1 groups, and the light are the final 3 themes. The goal of the qualitative analysis was to identify if Gold Award recipients identified characteristics relating servant leadership in narrative responses, reflecting how Girl Scouts was an influence. Narrative responses had 53% of coded items reflecting servant leadership characteristics. Other leadership characteristics were 17%, and the 30% balance were unrelated to leadership, such as travel, camp, friends, or new opportunities. An interesting observation I made during the review process relates to the Girl Scout mission statement. I had an expectation these keywords, courage, confidence, and character, would be reflected in narrative responses. Courage was mentioned 5 times, confidence was mentioned 56 times, and character was mentioned 10 times. These words were not used any more or less than other phrases describing the influence of Girl Scouts. Although there was good response data from the survey, the population created its own limits. There was no opportunity to verify if respondents had received the Gold Award. There aren't accurate lists of Gold Award recipients. The survey was based on Van Dieterach and Nuchin, but the edited version was not tested for validity. The qualitative analysis limitations: we only performed analysis on 1 question due to the responses trying to compare Girl Scouts to current leadership style. We could have had alternative wording of the narrative questions to delve more deeply, or done one-on-one interviews. There are many opportunities to expand on this research. The pool could be expanded to other types of leadership: Eagle Scout, team captains, National Honor Society members. Comparisons could be drawn in a broader group, such as within a high school graduating class, for those who served in leadership activities and those who weren't in leadership activities. There's opportunities to modify the survey, doing one-on-one interviews, delving more deeply into those narrative questions. Previous studies have shown social capital, development of character, and leadership traits, and understanding of community while a youth influence leadership as an adult. This study shows the potential for the same type of effect on leadership style. Understanding how youth activities can influence adult leadership styles could allow youth programs to promote those skills and structure programs to create strong leaders for the future. This project offers evidence a relationship exists between earning the Girl Scout Gold Award and servant leadership style later in life. Responses demonstrate a reflection of servant leadership characteristics, both through survey and narrative responses. Additional research opportunities exist to determine if other groups reflect similar or disparate responses to the research question. 2 years ago, I did not recognize myself as a servant leader. I was looking for a program that added to my overall self rather than enhancing skills I already use like an MBA program would. Going back to school was something I was doing for myself, not for my job or for prestige. If I was going to invest the time, money, and effort into schooling, I wanted to strengthen where I felt I was weakest. Interpersonal skills have always been difficult for me. I have trouble connecting with others on a personal level and have always been more of a checklist, task-oriented person. The program spoke to me because of my background. I believe in supporting the community and giving back. I volunteer at the library, my church, and Girl Scouts. I work for a nonprofit and feel a strong connection because of their mission. I had not heard of servant leadership and did not realize I enjoy leading best through the encouragement of others. This program has allowed me to recognize those characteristics in myself and become an even better, more personal leader. Interactions with my coworkers have improved. During my annual evaluation, the feedback from my team had more comments, and those comments were more detailed, allowing for actual action to be taken from them. The opportunity during different classes for self-reflection on how I was leading my life and the ability to join the pilgrimage to Assisi have led me to engage more strongly in my faith. The program has given me more confidence in myself. Next spring, I plan to work with school districts to educate school counselors and other school staff on the value of the Gold Award. There are still additional opportunities for me to grow. I am much more open to listening to others in order to create a better working relationship. One observation I made during the program is the importance of remembering names, faces, and people's stories. The pleasure of hearing someone speak about you, sharing personal information, creates an appreciation and engagement that develops a strong bond. These types of memory skills have always been difficult for me, but I recognize the positive feedback that happens when mastering this skill. But most of all, I appreciate the friends I have made in the program. I treasure every one of them. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Cheryl, I wrote down just wow. As you were going through it, one of the questions that came up, I'm more familiar with the Eagle Scouts than the Gold Award, and you answered one of the action steps you're taking forward to get out there and to educate the school counselors. Have you thought about the potential of a study like this, and I think it's called a longitudinal study over decades, where you track a group of Gold Award recipients as they go through their careers, corporate life, personal life? The potential for the Girl Scouts, I think, is just unreal with this type of work. So maybe my question is, have you thought about, you've taken some immediate steps, but looking out a couple decades from now, where do you go with this?
That's actually something that Girl Scouts at a national level has been struggling with. We have an organization called the Girl Scout Research Institute, and they have reached out to some Girl Scout alumni on that subject, but unfortunately, Girl Scouts, both at the council level and nationwide, have been very poor about tracking their Gold Award recipients. And so they don't even have the list of the people that have earned the award in order to go back and track them. They've been making, over the last few years, they've been making changes, and so they now have some methods to do that. But yes, that is definitely something that would be very, very important. We have to get the base in there though first in order to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is so extraordinary is that Girl Scouts for decades have been providing young women an opportunity to develop leadership skills, when we clearly know that the bias has always been to focus on young men. The women that you talk to, are they able to talk about that, how significant that was in their development at kind of an age in which Matthew uses this language much better than I do, but you experience moral injury, the peer pressure, how difficult things can be. But it seems to me, as an outsider who doesn't have any experience at all, that here's an opportunity for young girls to be mentored by older women in developing leadership. Did you find that reflected in
Yep.
your interviews?
Yes, actually one of the items that I characterized, that I coded as a non-leadership trait was the acceptance, the safe environment. There were lots of comments about the fact that Girl Scouts felt like a safe environment. They didn't need to worry about whatever was going on with their family or whatever. They knew that they could come to Girl Scouts and be someplace where they were going to be accepted and where they were going to be served at their own level and to serve their own needs. There were many comments like that in my results.
I'm just amazed how many, by using social media and SurveyMonkey, the number of responses you got. That's incredible.
And I was actually kind of disappointed.
That is excellent. No. I mean, going out random and soliciting that's incredible numbers of responses.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheryl, can you talk about the process that you went through to build that into your plan? Because I think a lot of times when we're doing research, things don't go the way we anticipate,
Right.
want them to.
Right, and so when I submitted to the IRB, my goal was to only send this email out explaining the project with the survey link. So originally there was an email to the councils, and then there was an email that the councils could send out to potential participants that had the link in it. But I was very, very aware of the lack of contact information that councils had. Plus, within the last 5 years, nationwide, we have gone from over 300 councils to about 100 councils. And so with those transitions, then you lose even more data. And so I was worried about being able to get responses that way. It obviously became a valid worry. So in my IRB, I built in the option to use social media in order to generate more responses.
What's the acronym you're using?
IRB, Institutional Review Board.
Oh.
That's who has to approve your project before you can survey people. I
Okay.
apologize.
There's also the JAM.
Well, I was just going to say IRB, the students haven't been talking about that a lot, but it's a very daunting process that students have to go through to get approval to do human subjects research in any institution, and all of these students went through that process, unless they were doing content analysis without human subject content. So it's very daunting. They all did a great job. Their materials, you would be amazed at what you have to submit to be able to get approval. So that's something you're not hearing about as much, but a big part of this work.
One thing I would just point out, that again, this is sort of themes emerging each time we do colloquium, but maybe it's because Tom and I did youth ministry before we did this work. His was a couple decades earlier, but
I have shoes older than Matthew.
but this idea of the kind of this gold standard that we're after, not the gold award, but the gold standard of how does servant leadership look at formation over time. I mean, so much of the data comes from people who are adults, who are already in leadership positions, and it sort of misses this idea that formation starts, you know, as Melissa talked about, in infancy and how we parent and all of these things. Girl Scouts picks this up at a time, especially when adolescent girls are faced with the biggest challenges in terms of identity formation. And it seems to me that we need more research on how that formation process takes place. And this shows a way to get around some of those longitudinal data problems, even if you can't follow somebody. I mean, there's wonderful studies done by other people about tracking people every 7 years, and now they're like 49 years out. We probably don't have the resources to do that, but this gives a way of us at least getting at some of these ideas of formation. And so I hope that others here who are on the journey in the coursework will see this as a real possibility for getting at formation questions in a really unique way. So thank you.
I think my time's up.
Oh.
You can ask me later. Oh, no. Can I take her question? Okay.
And I really want to thank you, Cheryl, for your project. When you first said you were going to talk about the Girl Scouts, I didn't realize all that entailed. And in addition to the research that you've done, you've also caused me to reflect on my own experiences as a Girl Scout. And I've never really taken the time to appreciate some of those. So as you were talking, I have all these moments in my background that have come to light. So it's really, I'm just feeling tingly because I'm thinking about all these special things that happened when I was a Girl Scout. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.